The first time he called me sweetheart, I was standing ankle-deep in frozen mud, reviewing the structural blueprints I personally designed. He leaned on the back of my chair like it belonged to him, hard hat tipped too far back, voice dripping with that casual condescension folks think you can't hear when it's wrapped in a smile. "Sweetheart, do me a favor and grab the boys some more coffee, would you? Meeting's about to start." I didn't flinch, just folded my hands over the tablet in front of me, my fingers still cold from the morning walkthrough. "I'm the lead structural engineer," I said calmly. "The boys can get their own coffee." But the world don't work like equations. It works like politics, like poker games and handshakes you weren't invited to. My name is Camille R Johnson. I've got a master's in civil engineering from Georgia Tech and a calm I learned from my mother, the kind of woman who could slice through chaos with her eyes alone. She taught me two things that stuck. One, people will talk like you're a ghost if it helps them feel bigger. Two, power comes quiet until it doesn't. So when they started cutting my name off of the drafts, I didn't raise hell. When Dennis, my supervisor, started presenting my concepts as collaborative input, I didn't snatch my designs off the table. And when the firm submitted my proposal to the city under his name, I smiled, shook hands, and said, "Congratulations." Because I already knew what they didn't. They'd underestimated the woman who drew that bridge, and I was going to build it anyway. The commission came through 6 months later. A full-span pedestrian and light rail bridge stretching over the Chattahoochee River, sleek, sustainable, seismic resistant. Exactly like I envisioned. Every beam, every tension cable, every load-bearing arc. They put Dennis in charge, called him visionary, let him take interviews, shake hands with the mayor. Meanwhile, I was tucked in a trailer office beside the site, managing the actual engineering, logistics, materials, safety checks, reinforcement inspections. No credit, no name, but a slow, quiet fire in my chest that burned clean and steady. I kept my head down, sure, but I also kept a copy of every draft, every time-stamped design, every digital correspondence with the city's planning board. See, I wasn't just building a bridge, I was building proof. And when the time came, when the cameras were rolling and the ribbon stretched taut across the entrance, the truth would walk across that bridge first, not Dennis, not the firm, me. My office was a prefab trailer with 2 folding chairs, 1 cracked window, and a heater that whined like it was sick of surviving the cold. The men called it the shoebox, like it was a joke, like putting me in that corner kept me small. But let me tell you something about corners. Corners hold foundation, corners see everything. And from my little box on the edge of the site, I saw the entire operation unfold. I saw how the welders skipped their safety harnesses when no one was looking. I saw the missing rebar bundles that magically reappeared when Dennis brought investors by. I saw the shortcuts, the concrete not cured right, the rivets swapped for cheaper imports. Dennis didn't know the bridge like I did. He didn't know that its strength depended on discipline, precision. He didn't understand that a hairline crack in the support spine could mean a lifetime of risk. But he knew how to talk, and in meetings, that's all that seemed to matter. He'd swagger into the conference room 30 minutes late, holding an iced coffee like he was doing us all a favor. Because the truth was uncomfortable, and nobody wanted to be the one to say it. Not out loud. I was the only black woman on the team, and I was the one who knew the difference between good enough and safe. I remember one morning, about a month into construction, a junior tech named Eli pulled me aside. "You ever think about transferring to a better firm?" he asked, fidgeting with the edge of his clipboard. "You're overqualified here." Overqualified. That word again, like a compliment dipped in pity. I smiled. "I've got something to finish first." He looked confused. I didn't explain. What I didn't tell him was that my mama's father, my grandfather, worked as a steel fixer on the first span built over the Chattahoochee. Back when they didn't let black men join the main crew, just handed them rebar and told them to stay out the way. He'd come home with hands cracked open and skin burnt from sun and sparks, and still, he'd look at the photos in the newspaper and say, "That beam? That one there? That's mine." They never put his name on it. They never will. But mine would last. And if I had to sit in this trailer a little longer, eat disrespect like lunch meat, smile while they called me assistant, then so be it. Because I wasn't just engineering steel, I was engineering a legacy, and I was documenting every minute of it. The trouble started with the tension cables. I'd calculated a dynamic load threshold that factored in seasonal thermal expansion, pedestrian weight variability, and even the sway from the nearby light rail. But somewhere between my last signed draft and what got installed, they swapped out the high-grade tension lines for a cheaper composite, one that couldn't handle prolonged stress without micro-fracturing. I knew it the minute I felt that faint vibration walking across the catwalk. Not enough to rattle the hard hat, just enough to whisper, "Something's wrong." I brought it to Dennis that afternoon, quiet, professional, clipboard in hand, facts in check. "These cables weren't the ones I specified," I said. "I cross-referenced the order number. They've got a lower fatigue resistance. Long-term wear will be unpredictable." He didn't even look up from his phone. "They're within margin." "Barely," I said, still calm. But with the rail line overhead and the increase in pedestrian volume, "Camille," he cut me off, finally glancing up. "You're brilliant with the numbers, but this is $1 million timeline. I'm not holding up the ribbon cutting because you got cold feet over cable specs." I blinked. Cold feet? He waved a hand like I was interrupting something important. "We'll reinforce later if we need to. That's how projects evolve. It's called being flexible." I stood there for a moment, the weight of his arrogance pressing harder than any steel girder. "I'd like to put this concern in writing," I said finally. That got his attention. His jaw tightened just enough to show it. He leaned back. "You do what you need to do, sweetheart." So I did. I wrote a formal report, attached cross-section diagrams, noted exact cable model variances, highlighted projected long-term risk zones. I sent it to Dennis. I CC'd legal. I CC'd city engineering compliance. Then I printed a hard copy and filed it in a folder under my desk labeled, "When they say it wasn't my fault." That was the moment something shifted. Not in me. I'd already been awake. But in them. The good mornings got shorter. My site access was quietly restricted in some zones. They moved safety inspections to times I wasn't scheduled. And when reporters came to tour the site, Dennis walked right past my office, didn't even glance. But they forgot one thing: I was still watching, still counting every missing bolt, still noting every silent compromise, still archiving everything. Because bridges hold weight, but they also hold truth. And one of those cables was going to snap long before mine did. The city sent out a drone crew the next week, a little PR stunt for the mayor's office. Aerial footage of progress and innovation, all dressed up in drone-shot beauty for the campaign reel. I watched from my trailer as the footage streamed live to a monitor near the welcome tent. There was Dennis, bright orange vest freshly pressed, standing shoulder to shoulder with Councilwoman Graves like they were co-authors of the skyline. And, of course, Dennis was saying, my team executed this based on my original vision. We wanted something both modern and timeless, a structure that speaks to the future. I leaned closer, squinting at the screen. There it was, my design. The dual-arch sweep, the angular tension anchors, the stormwater collection system cleverly built into the pedestrian path. All of it. But he said my team, like I was one of the hands, not the head. Later that afternoon they brought her to meet us, Councilwoman Graves, tailored navy suit, patent heels dusty from the walk. She had a kind of poise that wasn't born. It was built. Decades of walking into rooms where her presence was tolerated, not welcomed. I respected her before she even opened her mouth. Dennis did the talking, of course. Showed her around the pylons, pointed at steel with fake familiarity, rattled off half-true facts he barely understood. I followed silently, clipboard in hand. Then she turned, looked straight at me and said, "And you are?" Before I could open my mouth, Dennis answered, "She handles technical support, keeps the wires plugged in and the drafts neat." My stomach didn't drop. I didn't blink. But my fingers tightened on that clipboard just a little, because that wasn't a slip. That wasn't ignorance. That was a choice. And that's when I knew he wanted me erased. That night, I stayed late. The site emptied out. The air got colder. I pulled up the structural stress data from the day's tests, the ones they hadn't bothered to review, and saw what I feared. Cable integrity loss. Small, subtle, but real. A 3.2% drop in load tolerance across the eastern tension line, the one I'd flagged weeks ago. If they didn't replace it before the concrete pour, stress from thermal curing would double the strain. Not enough to cause collapse, but enough to cause a crack. A hairline fracture that could grow silently over months, like disrespect, like erasure. The next week, Dennis took a leave of absence. Stress, they said, needed rest. Word around the site was that upper leadership had quietly reviewed his conduct. My name started showing up in emails again, not just as CC, but two. Gina approached me at lunch one day. "For what it's worth," she said, "I knew they were playing you, She trailed off. Didn't finish. I didn't need her to, because I wasn't here for their guilt. I was here to finish the bridge. They tried to keep the ceremony quiet at first. No press, they said. Internal stakeholders only. But a structure like that don't stay quiet. Not when it stretches 3 city blocks and gleams like a blade in the sky." By the morning of the ribbon cutting, camera vans lined the street. Drones buzzed above like curious insects, and the city's mayor had rescheduled his entire calendar just to make sure his face showed up beside it. I arrived early, alone, hard hat off, black suit on, hair pulled back with the same silver pin my mama wore to her retirement dinner, a silent anchor like always. The crew was already buzzing when I stepped onto the platform. People I'd worked beside for months now glanced at me, then looked away, or nodded barely, or said nothing at all. That was fine. I wasn't there for a welcome. I was there to witness what they couldn't erase. The speeches started around 10. Councilwoman Graves gave her polished opener, talked about sustainability, legacy, innovation led by a brilliant, diverse team. She didn't say my name. Then came Caldwell, with his thin smile and polished delivery. He glanced at me once, mid-sentence. A flicker. "As we celebrate this new addition to the city's infrastructure," he said, "we also recognize the minds behind its integrity. Quiet minds, precise minds, minds who never needed a spotlight to lead." Another flicker toward me. Still no name. I stood at the edge of the crowd, fingers folded, calm as ever. watching, letting them talk, because I knew what was waiting under the tarp. "Before we cut the ribbon," Caldwell announced, stepping back toward the East Arch, "we'd like to unveil a small tribute, one that will outlast all our speeches." He pulled the cord. The fabric dropped, and the world slowed. A bronze plaque, gleaming, anchored to the base of the first arch where the bridge met the land. It read, "Designed and engineered by Camille R. Johnson, MSc. With precision, vision, and integrity, may this bridge carry all who doubted her." There was a beat of silence, and then applause, scattered at first, then swelling. Some clapped because they meant it. Some clapped because they had to. Some clapped just to fill the air. I didn't smile. I didn't cry. I just stepped forward, heels hitting concrete. I poured myself, and stood beside the name they swore didn't matter. The mayor shook my hand like he'd always known me. A local news anchor asked for a photo. Caldwell leaned in afterward and said, "You built it. They know now." I nodded, finally letting the smallest smile form. "They always did," I said. "They just didn't want to admit it." That night I stayed behind after the crowds cleared. No camera crews, no applause, just the hum of a city CR. Bossing something I made. I walked to the center of the bridge, paused, and looked out over the water. It moved quietly, but it moved, like legacy, like power, like me. 3 weeks after the ribbon cutting, I received a letter in the mail. Not an email, not a ping on my phone. A letter, thick, cream paper, embossed seal. Inside, an offer. Director of Structural Innovation. Citywide. Not a firm. A seat at the table where city blueprints are born. They wanted me not just to design bridges, they wanted me to define them. And I took a long breath, because I remembered the cold mornings in that trailer, the heat in my cheeks every time they called me sweetheart, the way they passed around my designs like napkins, useful, disposable, unclaimed. And now they were asking me to lead, not because I demanded it, because I proved it. Dennis never came back to the site. Word was he took a job out of state, something smaller, quieter, the kind of role where no one asked too many questions. I didn't send him off bitter. He was never the main obstacle, he was just a loud one. The real battle had always been quieter. The assumptions, the erasures, the way competence worn by a black woman gets repackaged as support instead of leadership. But not this time. Not anymore. One evening I brought my mother to the bridge. She moved slowly now, but her eyes were sharp as ever. We walked the span together, no noise, no crowd, just the sunset bleeding gold across the water. When we reached the East Arch, she stopped. Her eyes landed on the plaque. She didn't touch it. Just stood in front of it and smiled. This soft, proud, quiet smile that held years behind it. Decades of being overlooked. Decades of carrying grace like armor. "This is yours too," I said. She didn't answer, just slid her arm into mine and whispered, "You built it strong, baby. That's all I ever prayed for." People cross the bridge now every day, tourists, students, workers heading home. They take pictures. They admire the curve of the steel and the way the lights flicker at night. Some read the plaque, some don't. But it's there, permanent, true, undeniable. Not because I shouted, not because I begged, because I built it. And that's the thing they never saw coming, that you don't have to fight loud to win, you just have to hold steady, like bronze, like steel, like me.